Hello, hi, welcome to PMO Learning's PMO Training Q&A. We're here for the next hour or so, and essentially what we're going to be doing over this time is talking about some of the questions that we've been getting about different types of PMO training and different aspects of people's careers and all this kind of good stuff. So essentially, just before we get into that, it's just a little bit of webinar etiquette, but if you've got any questions yourself, you can use the chat facility and we'll pick up those questions. But essentially what we've already done is pulled together some of the questions that we've had ever since PMO Learning started. We've been out and about talking to people, things like Project Challenge, Project obviously PMO Flash Mob, and through various emails and things that we get. And we thought what might be a good idea is to share some of the questions that people like yourself, your peers in PMO, have been asking. So yeah, that's why we're here today. And like I said, you can put your questions to us, but if you're watching this on a recorded session afterwards, you can always put a question to us as well by going along to our website, which is pmolearning.co.uk. So before we get started, I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Eileen.
And yeah, essentially we're going to start taking you through the questions. So Eileen, first question.
Are we going to do a bit of introductions first?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
So for those of you who have not met us in person or come across us at Flash Mob or a training event or kind of through recruitment, then my name's Eileen, as we said, and I have been a PMO practitioner for more years probably than I care to remember. For the last 12 or so years, I've been doing it from the other side of the fence in terms of doing training and consultancy and been helping organisations develop their own capability in-house, and have been involved in organising conferences and training sessions for PMOs for as long as I can remember, and essentially where Lindsay and I met several years ago.
Yes, we I think we bumped into several years. Sounds I think it's probably more like 15, 16 years ago. But yeah, essentially we met at a PMO conference and
that we'd organised.
But we organised, yes. And so yeah, but basically my background was I used to be a PMO practitioner way back, and essentially had the opportunity to start my own business, and that's when I got into the recruitment side. And because of the background I had in PMO, obviously PMO recruitment, was still a big part of that, and essentially have been doing that for many years. So I've seen many changes, and no doubt you have.
Indeed. But you've always been involved in the conferences, so things like the Flash Mob and the conference you initiated. Yeah. So that's always been there as a kind of a going alongside the recruitment work. You've never lost touch with PMO.
Oh no, not at all. And I think yeah. So even though I don't get my hands dirty anymore, leave that up to you lot out there. Yeah, I am totally interested in the subject, and it has changed a lot. And I think we'll probably pick up on some of those things as to why we're here now, really.
Which is really essentially the first question, which people ask us in terms of, well, actually, why did he bother set up PMO Learning in the first place, and kind of why now?
Yeah, I think it's if I go back, we were a Flash Mob probably 3 years ago, maybe down in Southampton. I remember it's probably from the conversations that we had, because that's the great thing about Flash Mob. You get a lot of different conversations. I think what probably came up that night, and then we kept on having a conversation about it, is there needs to be more in terms of the type of training opportunities that are out there for PMO people. And we were sat there thinking, we just need to do it. You just need to get on and do it. But it's like anything, you've got day jobs and what have you. But
I also think one of the things that you'll notice we're called PMO Learning. We're not about project management learning. We focus specifically on PMO learning and development for those who are looking to go into PMOs, working in PMOs and managing PMOs, because a lot of the PMO training, and there is kind of some out there, but it tends to get lost with some of the project management training, and we wanted a place where people could come and they know that the courses are not kind of just tweaked project management courses. They're actually kind of set up specifically for PMO professionals who work out there or who want to work in the PMO arena.
Yeah, and there is, and it is a profession in its own right. I mean, we see that obviously from my recruitment side of what I do, but obviously for the last few years in flash mobs and stuff. But you're getting good groups of people coming out, so you know the profession. Okay, it's still young, but there's it's obvious that the training side of it, the knowledge building side of it, is kind of lagged behind a little bit, and so that's it's kind of like the accumulation of all of that stuff. And we said that actually one thing that we'd never really done is worked formally together, so that's why we started this. And
here we go. So I think in terms of the training, as I've already mentioned, is one of the things that we specifically focus on is the PMO training. And a lot of people ask, well, actually, as a PMO person, I need project management knowledge, program knowledge, and portfolio knowledge. Is that not enough to do my role? And actually, as a PMO professional, there's a number of things that we have to do over and above all of that kind of project, program, and portfolio knowledge and skills. It's about actually setting up a PMO, running a PMO, transforming PMOs as the company and the environment we work in changes, and also close down PMOs when we're required. So that whole kind of managing the life cycle of a PMO is not ever taught on a project management course. And actually, from a PMO perspective, we deliver a range of services into projects, programs, and portfolios. And again, the setting up of those services, the managing and the transformation of those services is an important part that we kind of focus on within our organisation. And when we started, what we've done is pull together kind of 12 months or so, when we started kind of putting the business together, was focus on the certification courses that were out there, because some people don't actually recognise the fact or know that there's been certification courses for PMOs back since 1999. And interestingly, Lindsay and I, who kind of didn't quite know each other then, both did the original PPSO certification course independently. And we've been recently comparing our notes on our course materials that we did back then. And so that's where
I had neat handwriting on mine.
You did.
I did.
Some things never change, yes, and lots of kind of doodles and graphics as well around that. So we're very much kind of starting a focus on the certification courses.
I mean, just to say that in terms of the benefits of doing a PMO training versus just in project management training, if I think back to back then when the first certifications were coming out, like the PPSO stuff, and some of the people that were doing that course back then at the same time as Eileen and I, and are still in the field around PMO, it was almost like they've had to go through their career having to find out a lot of stuff themselves from various places, a lot of trial and error. You could even say that their career, who knows, I mean, it's a difficult one, but it could have accelerated, could have been if a lot more of this knowledge around PMOs had been there. So I think it's almost like now there's been a lot of stuff being brought together in various different certifications, and that can only be a good thing, because it's not the Wild West anymore as it was.
There's lots of established good practice, and we all know it needs to be tailored for the context and tailored for our own organisation, but there is an awful lot of kind of good practice out there that we can kind of learn from and adapt for our own organisations. So just kind of moving on to this kind of why certification courses, and I think we've seen over the last kind of few years is that recognition of achieving a standard, a recognised standard, is really kind of helpful for you as an individual to know that you've actually kind of reached that standard, but also demonstrating to your current employer and potentially a future employer that actually that this is where you sit within the kind of the career path and the development path for PMO professionals.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we've concentrated on the kind of the three certifications that were kind of around when we kind of pulled the organisation together. The first one is the BCS certification, the PPSO certificate, and advanced certificate, which, as I say, has been around since 1999-2000. We took the P3O certification courses, which have been around since 2009, refreshed again in 2013. I happen to know that quite well since I did that and wrote the book.
Yes.
And also there's a new certifications come out through AIPMO, which we'll kind of come on to since 2016. So those are the kind of the major kind of certifications that are available.
I think it's also worth saying, I think we all recognise as well that, why people opt for certified courses is, we can't get away from the obvious thing that, Prince choose very much about for project managers, they need to have this in terms of to be considered or shortlisted for applications and things. And it's not so much in the PMO world, but where that exists, I would say, for more enlightened recruitment agencies, there is still that sway actually that you would have done project management things or program or portfolio qualifications, but like I said, that is changing, and obviously the most common one, and we'll come on to that, is P3O. But I think that's why a lot of people opt for the certified course is that is the marketplace, the employment marketplace, as well as being able to say, I've done this course because it's it's about best practice, and I'm demonstrating that that I'm capable of knowledge level wise, and but it's interesting just how much it differs from the project management space for the PMO.
But I think as PMOs are now becoming more common and more understood, then the expectation that you have a certification in your field, in your professional field, is becoming more of a requirement.
Yeah, and I also think that if you're committed to a career, if PMO is where you've been and where you're going to and planning on staying there, but there is that you should be looking at development.
Absolutely.
And why not? I mean, if this is the field you work in, of course you want to be able to have as I say, more people want to be certified in that profession that they've dedicated themselves to.
And it is worth mentioning, though, although we've kind of started off doing the certification courses for all of the reasons we've just discussed, what we're not doing is kind of ruling out any non-certification courses. In fact, what you'll see with PMO Learning as we kind of go through the next few months is a number of other non-certification courses for particular specialised skills that will supplement the key certification courses. So we'll talk a little bit about those further on, but they're definitely kind of coming through.
Yeah.
So interestingly, in terms of kind of having 3 different certification courses, people often ask, well, actually, kind of which certification is best?
That was the most common question we got at Project Challenge. When people saw this, what you're seeing on screen now, the levels and stuff, it's like, well, okay, right, where am I? That's the first questions, really.
And interestingly, what we don't want to get into is kind of which certification is best. What we want to have the conversation is which certification is best for you. So because each of these kind of certifications has merit and has value, and there is some overlap in content, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go and get all of those kind of certifications, but it's definitely worth thinking about which one is most appropriate for you in terms of your current context, but also where you're looking to go next. Yeah. So hopefully some of the questions that we'll cover off in this kind of webinar will help you kind of answer some of those questions. And as I say, if you've got kind of specific questions, kind of put them in the chat and we'll pick them up as we go through. I think before we kind of go through the certifications, it's probably worth just mentioning the different levels that we've got on the left-hand side, because we didn't put any words against them, but they effectively do demonstrate an upward trajectory in terms of a PMO career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it was one of the obvious things for me. I mean, Eileen's the one that she's training her thing, and for me, when I'm thinking about the levels, it's I automatically think of like PMO roles, just so I can get my head around it. So essentially, level 1 is your kind of project administrator, somebody fairly new to the field, right up to like a project coordinator type person. Level 2 is more of your experienced PMO analyst. Somebody that has been around the block a few times, is doing things like introducing new services and refreshing services and doing process work, that kind of thing. Level 3 is your PMO manager, who is managing maybe 1 or 2 PMOs, and again is somebody that you could have been doing that for many years, but it's very much managing smaller, or let's say less complex type PMOs. And
even at that level 3, you can be somebody who is running a PMO for a kind of a division. So it's a permanent PMO. Yeah. It's not a temporary. It's not just a temporary project office or a temporary program office. It's actually an established kind of permanent office within the organisation. And I think the idea is that kind of level 3 is your focus is that kind of one PMO and delivering the services out of that PMO.
Yeah, and the distinction, of course, with level 4 is that it's a more senior level, but it's probably your role is probably something like head of portfolio, head of projects, maybe PMO director, and your responsibilities are more at that enterprise PMO level. I love the word
topology. Enterprises. So what we've said around that level 4, it's people who are looking across the whole PMO enterprise topology. So basically you're working with kind of the very senior team. You're saying, actually, as an organisation, we have a strategy to deliver. We're going to deliver that through, yes, we've got some business as usual. We've got a lot of projects and programmes. How do we set up PMO services across the whole organisation in order to support the delivery of that portfolio? And that may be setting up 4 or 5 sub-portfolios and some sub-portfolio officers and some programme officers and some project officers. And how do we bring together all of the services that sit across of that whole organisation?
Yeah.
So part of me is the really exciting thing is that those roles are actually becoming much more common, because they were almost unheard of when I actually I was directly employed as a PMO manager, and now I work with quite a number of people who actually kind of hold that role. And every now and I get tempted to say one, but we're going to kind of stick with where we are and kind of helping other people to kind of achieve and excel at all of those 4 different levels.
And this is the conversations we've had over the years as well, is that because the role of PMO has changed, and this higher level, but more closer to the board, enterprise, whatever you want to call it, is it has become more of a thing. What has not kept up really is how do you get to that level? Do you have to go into delivery mode, or actually you don't, but the knowledge and the experience, it has to come from somewhere, and this is why we got a bit excited about this level.
And the other thing is as well is that you don't get a real understanding of what it means to be doing that as a day-to-day role from just attending project management courses. So just attending a management of portfolio courses, yes, will give you an understanding of kind of the processes that you're going to support, but in terms of how you're going about setting that up, kind of stakeholder engagement and the kind of the management aspects of that. And again, it's about this managing the project management, the PMO life cycle becomes kind of much more specialist knowledge within the PMO.
And as you'll see right on the right end, the far end of what you're looking at right now is that you'll see prints to your MSP and your MOP, and what we're saying is that traditionally when we've done quite a bit of research and PMO benchmark report asking about what certifications that people do today, and because there's not that much in terms of PMO, and of course you'll see that people tend to opt for project related stuff around level 1 and 2. And really, what is really interesting is that still today, the most common type of PMO is actually a program level PMO, which is why obviously some PMO people opt for that MSP. And then, of course, now you're seeing the more portfolio level led work, which is why, level 4 might be more of that MOP stuff. But, that's not our focus. We're very much about the PMO stuff.
Yeah, across the loop.
You can go and find that training everywhere else. Yeah.
And so what you'll see in terms of the 3 certifications that we taken up is that they cover all 4 levels, no surprise, starting from the PPSO Essential Certificate, which is right at entry level, so really aimed at individuals who have not worked in a project environment, let alone a PMO, and are really looking at kind of project management and PMO knowledge from that. So we'll talk about each of the certifications. And again, kind of level 3 is working up to the kind of the PMO manager role. P3O, as we've talked about, is the most kind of the most common at the moment, and really the P3O foundation really starts kicking off when you've got a bit of project knowledge. And doing the foundation without any knowledge at all, I think, is a real struggle for individuals. So having some project knowledge before you go on that P3O foundation course is obviously useful, and again taking you up to level 3. And the AIPMO certification is really kind of, actually their foundation certificate starts at level 2. We've had lots of conversations about the different terminologies that the various bodies have used for the different levels, so we've just gone with what they call them, and we'll live with that. So their foundation level is actually equivalent to a level 2. So somebody who knows projects and programs, who's been working in a PMO for a while, and really wants to kind of establish some kind of some broader kind of theoretical knowledge around and experience around that particular element of delivering services. The practitioner level for AIPMO is at PMO manager level, and the expert level is really, again, looking at that kind of across the organisation. And we're going to talk about each of the individual kind of certifications. We've just talked about the benefit of certified training as having an established understanding of a standard, and AIPMO is certainly becoming more prevalent now, and hopefully will become a recognised standard. But we'll talk about some of the benefits of that as we talk about that certification.
I was saying what dawned on me a while back is that if you look at the when these certifications have come in, so we're talking like back 2002 for the BCS stuff, and then you've got that kind of like 2009, 13, and then now we're on to 18. It's like, well, what's going to happen in 2024, 25?
We need a wider picture for when the next one might come in. There
seems to be a cycle of of that kind of 8
or 9 years.
Which is
We'll see what happens next. So let's just kind of have a go through these, and we, rather than kind of just talk about the certification, we really wanted to go back to the questions that we've been asked from individuals. So the first one is really about kind of the BCS certification and what's it about and who's it aimed at. And I think the interesting bit from the BCS certification is it's actually the owner of that sits within the British Computing Society, the Chartered Institute for IT. And it said, hold on a minute, is it an IT course? Well, actually, it's not an IT course, but it stems from the fact that certainly back in 1999-2000, the majority of PMOs outside the construction industry were actually in IT. And therefore, as the BCS and as the IT will develop sets of qualifications, because the BCS also do a project management qualification, they recognise the importance of having qualifications for a PMO. So it was interesting in terms of kind of, they were actually trailblazers. And I think they've lost some of that kind of credit because people, as I say, are less familiar with the BCS certification. And certainly the essential certificate is a really good certification and the most appropriate if you're coming into PMO without any project management knowledge as well. So you could do a PMO course and a project management course. This is a 4-day course that allows you to do elements of both that will take you into and kind of set you up for going in and doing an entry-level role within a PMO.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to quite a few PMO managers that dropped by the stand. I remember with the project managers where this question's come from, because a lot of people weren't familiar with it. And for them, they, if you've got a team of PMO people, where you inherit somebody from another part of the business, that's got good maybe administrative skills and showing an aptitude for this kind of stuff. That it's a good course for them to consider for their, for these people that are very new to the PMO. And it's interesting when you talk to them about, well, actually, what is that course about? And it's perfect because it's just enough project management knowledge, but in the context of their role when they go back. So, for example, if you're going to look at risk management as being obviously a big part about project management, you learn just enough. And then it's about, and then, when you're back in your role, it gets into the well, what you're doing with a risk log and all of that kind of stuff. So, it was a brilliant course back then.
It was the only PMO course. It really was the only PM course that was around at the time.
But if you think about it today, if you're getting people that are new, and I'm seriously thinking, in terms of things like graduates.
Absolutely.
Even, now with like the apprentice things, you're getting people coming in at that level, and it still stands the test of time.
Absolutely, it does, and we've gone back and reviewed that. Just a quick word on the Advanced Practitioner Certificate. If you need to remember now, back to the picture, is that's sitting at level 3, because that's around setting up the business case for the PMO and for a PMO charter, and setting up the services. So it kind of takes it to the next level. So the essentials around these are all of the services, and this is how it links to the supporting project and program management. And the advanced certificate is about and how do we then kind of decide on what that is by setting those services up. And if the majority of people who attend that advanced practitioner certificate or people in IT who've actually done the essential certificate. It's certainly less prevalent now than it used to be, but it still has value as a course.
And the other thing as well is, if you want to have a look at the modules for those, it's available on our website. You can go and have a look at the website, look at the certified courses, and you'll see more detail in terms of what are the modules for that training, and you'll so you can just see what it contains.
Okay. So the next one, which we've kind of said is probably the most well-known one, is the P3O course. Beautiful book, well written. And in terms of what kind of people attend the P3O course, and interestingly, in terms of the approach that's taken from the Axelos stable, so which covers off Prince 2 MSP, is that they will not spend time writing or including in the textbook things that are covered in multitude of other texts elsewhere. So what we've got in the P3O is really a really crisp and clear analysis of how do I understand what I need to do in my PMO to support the organisation. And it has lots of kind of suggested things that you could deliver, but actually the real beauty of the P3O course is it asks you, it tells you all of the questions that you need to ask to make the right decisions to set the P3O up, the PMO up, the way you need to do. So P3O is Portfolio Programme and Project Officers. So again, it does look at that kind of across the whole organisation, but it allows you to look at each PMO and say kind of what are we for? And it has some fantastic kind of tools and techniques that are used in that process. It also has reference to P3M3 in terms of if you've been through a kind of a P3M3 assessment, how do we kind of take the findings from that and how do we select, or how do we, what do we have to do from a PMO perspective to help develop the maturity of the organisation to move from level 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. And interestingly, as a P3M3 assessor myself, we know that actually to achieve level 3, you need to have an established PMO. You need to have formally documented processes that people follow. And so, if you're going through a P3M3 assessment, then P3O is kind of really useful.
Why would I want to attend this course if I were like a coordinator or an analyst?
So it's really interesting in terms of the foundation certificate, because those individuals are not expected to kind of go back from the course and set up PMOs, which is what the practitioner course is about. But what we found on the foundation course, it really helps those kind of analysts, so coordinators and analysts, understand why my PMO does this service and not that service. It understands how we why we do it for this particular customer, or why we have these customers. It helps them understand how to integrate with the rest of the organisation in terms of delivering those services, and also the various links with other PMOs across the whole organisation.
Yeah, I think I do remember when it first came out, and then you could tell just by the conversations changing. What is it? Is it Appendix F?
Appendix F, I say.
It's like a magic club, you know. Like, we'll know that you work in PMO if you say Appendix F, and you're like, oh yeah.
Appendix F. So it's interesting in terms of the P3O manual, is that there's about probably 60% of the book is the textbook, and it's probably 70% that is the textbook, but kind of good old 30% of that is some appendices, which are fantastic kind of reference material around the roles. It has some good role descriptions that are used in the PMO, and Appendix F that Lindsay referred to is a whole range of services that can be provided at project, programme, portfolio level, and also it has all of the kind of descriptors in terms of from a P3M3 assessment as well. So it's got a whole bits of kind of useful elements that can be used in developing your PMOs.
Yeah, I must admit, just from a recruitment point of view, you know, ever since P3O has been out and around and about, I still do get quite dismayed actually when you've got people that are working and operating in PMO that are not able to really articulate what P3O is about, for example. I mean, you know, if you're the recruitment process, you're asking, you know, questions about things like if it's a PMO setup role, for example. I will talk to them about, you know, elements of P3O, and it's just, you know,
and a bit like my husband who calls it P30.
P30, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's you know, if you're in this field, it's, I don't know how you cannot be, but then again, we have got other things now, so maybe.
Yes, but as I say, it's interesting, and it really, when it came out in 2009, and we've kind of refreshed it in 2013, it has actually become the de facto standard for understanding the whole kind of concept of a PMO and how it needs to be set up.
Yeah.
And you know, you've got a 3-day foundation, you've got a 2-day practitioner, and that is all focused about making sure your PMO does what it needs to do for your organisation. So it doesn't just cover setting it up, it does also talk about kind of how to kind of re-energise and obviously evolve that as you go through the process.
So one of the other questions I had about P3O is, do you think that people should take foundation, have a break, do practitioner, or because you can get the course separate like that, or you can do it all in one go? So why would you say individual ones versus the full week?
Well, I think it goes back to kind of what your current role is. So if I'm a coordinator or an analyst, then I may go and do the foundation course, and then as I'm about to step up to a manager's role, I would then go and do the practitioner certificate. If I'm currently a PMO manager, or I'm about to go into a PMO manager's role and I don't have the foundation certificate, I have to have the foundation before I can do the practitioner certificate. So in that way, you would attend for a full kind of 5-day course rather than kind of just do a 3 and then a +2.
Okay.
So the kind of the other certification, the final certification that we've kind of picked up is AIPMO, and the most frequent question we've had for the so far is, well, who are AIPMO? Because it is relatively new. Well, it's actually brand new to the UK. It has been developing the materials, and as you see, it's actually an association. It's not just an accreditation body. It is an association that's looking to kind of drive the kind of the whole skills and awareness through of PMOs through kind of certification and their body of knowledge. So they've been building up, and they are now very big in the Middle East, and we are fortunate enough to be the kind of first providers in the UK to offer these various certifications.
I think they got a boost quite early on because the Saudi ministries, which is equivalent to the government in there, is that it was mandated that anybody working in PMO had to to be and doing the AIPMO certifications. It's been fascinating actually to listen to how business is done now. PMOs are perceived, don't they? But,
and even the Prince of Saudi Arabia talks about his PMOs and how much he loves this certification, which, you know, I can only imagine kind of Prince Charles and Camilla kind of sitting talking about, we really need to have a conversation about our PMOs. But I think that one of the kind of the most overlapping area is about kind of that PMO manager level. And again, this has got a foundation level certificate for analysts, but then they've got the practitioner level for setting up a PMO. The interesting thing about kind of AIPMO certification, which is quite different from both the BCS and the P3O. The BCS and the P3O have almost a kind of a one-to-one relationship. So this is what you learn on the course and this is what you're going to be examined on. And so you get taught 100% of the syllabus and it's all examined. When you go to an AIPMO course, it's a bit different to that. And I think, you know, kind of the reason why it's different is this, in terms of the setup of the association. So the association recognises that actually the world's changing very fast, and we've already talked about how PMO world has changed over the last kind of 15 or so years that we've been working in the industry. They recognise that it's continuing to change, and so what they do is they have some kind of core text, and they've got some kind of core materials that you will learn around the project management life cycle and setting up the services. The interesting bit and the bit that I love about the AIPMO courses is the fact that what you also cover on those courses at all three levels is some of the kind of the more current thinking that's happening in the research. Now, much as kind of we may not be aware of it, there are individuals who are doing PhD research and master's research on various aspects and continuing to develop the thinking around PMOs. Obviously, as we've talked about, there is now many more PMOs, not just in the UK, but around the world. And that practice is being kind of pulled together. So the Academic Council kind of make a way, not only kind of drive some of that research, but kind of feed that into AIPMO. But we've also got a council of practitioners who are also bringing that in. So one of the kind of the really fascinating things about an AIPMO course is actually those kind of broader discussions that really challenge our thinking and recognizing that whatever we kind of learn in terms of whatever standard will have to change and develop. And actually, we need to be, as true PMO professionals, we should be watching what's happening in the world so we can also lead those changes within our own organisation and develop. So, you know, if you're a finance professional or an HR professional, there's an expectation that you will kind of keep up to date with developments. And the AIPMO is absolutely exactly the same. If you work in a PMO and you are a PMO professional, part of your role is to kind of keep an eye on what's happening and what developments are being made.
What's really interesting about this is that from the academic side is that, again, back in the day, without all this stuff being available, you know, how many times have we used to do things like we'd see the papers from Monique Aubrey, which, by the way, she is part of the academic council. But, you know, it was her papers and it's her writing for PMI and things like that, but actually helped inform a lot of our peers at the time in terms of how they were, you know, developing their PMOs and things like that. So in lots of ways, this is kind of like the next iteration that what's happened is that this association has been formed and it can only change more because you think about how much, you know, research gets done around management full stop. And we see how much, you know, PMOs are changing and have changed. And especially, you know, they get into this quite high level portfolio management, strategy, execution, all these kind of things. And you think, well, of course there's going to be research being done.
But I think it's not just that as well. It's also through the practitioner council. It's exactly as you said, is that, you know, because now we can kind of take that learning and we can take it early and put that into the courses and they're just really exciting. And the buzz on the AIPMO courses is amazing in terms of people having those kind of wider discussions than we perhaps on some of the more kind of one-to-one syllabus learning courses that we have in kind of P3O and the BCS. And as we've mentioned, in terms of the kind of the certification, there is 3 levels. At the foundation level, really based at coordinators and analysts, and probably more the analysts than the coordinators, kind of, because you do need to have some. So perhaps a coordinator who's ready to move up to the analyst role.
There's that bit, but I also think it's, an analyst that's been working in the job for a while it's more about the excellence, the excellence of the services that you're providing. So it's that extra, going that extra mile.
Yes, absolutely, and it is. It's developing kind of that. It's being the best at what you do.
Yeah.
And so the foundation course is really focused on those who are delivering PMO services. So they'll talk about through the course about actually kind of developing services for your organisation, how we put them in place, how we pilot them, how we manage and monitor them to make sure that they're continuing to add value, and how to also kind of bring those, close those, or kind of turn them off further on down the line when they're no longer required. The practitioner level, again, is based at PMO managers, as we've already discussed. But again, it takes a kind of broader view in terms of looking across the link back to kind of the strategy of the organisation and what your PMO and how that fits in, how you develop your service catalogue, and then how you actually manage your coordinators and your analysts as you go in deliver those services, and very much talking about kind of what kind of persona that your PMO takes in terms of the kind of the delivery of those services. And then the final one, the expert course, is based at those who are looking, as we mentioned before, about the whole PMO topology across the whole organisation. And the interesting one around this kind of expert course, it really is covers off, certainly kind of the front end of that course, actually covers off a lot of strategy and management theory about understanding how the organisation can be successful, how they develop their strategy, and therefore how we need to be able to talk in a business language and not just the project and program management language, because we're working with, kind of the senior team, and they don't all talk in project and program world. So it really is about kind of bridging that gap between projects and programs and real bottom line delivery to the organisation.
So the other thing about questions that we've had is that you can imagine that people see these feelings like, well, where am I? What should I be doing? Is that often what we invite people to do is, before you get to that point, if you've seen one of if you like the idea of them, you want to explore it more, what we say is that people fill out a form on a website and upload a LinkedIn profile or a CV. Because the idea is that we want to make sure that, like we've said at the top of the hour here, that it's about the best course for you. But equally with these courses, it's about getting the best course for everybody, because, like I say, a lot of it is discussions and the group exercises and things like that. You want to be able to be at the right level, really, in order to get the best out of it. So and that can only come from having a chat, really. So you can look at a CV, but it's kind of like back to my recruitment days. It's always good to have a conversation and just try and understand a little bit more about, yes, we can see what you've been doing, but what you're trying to do, where do you want to go next, and all that kind of stuff. And it's a good it's a helpful conversation to have.
Absolutely.
In order to be able to help you choose.
And I think kind of, which leads on to kind of the next question that we've had around the AIPMO certification. So we've already talked about, from a P3O perspective, you have to have your foundation to do the practitioner. From an AIPMO perspective, because it's new, what we don't expect people to do is, if you're kind of at that expert level, to say, oh no, you need to go back and do your foundation and practitioner before you can jump in at the expert level. So while it's still new, what we're doing is we're having those conversations to make sure people are at the right level. And if you're at the expert level, then actually we can go straight onto the expert level. What we're looking to do, and as the certifications get more established, then actually there will come a day when we say, actually, what we want people to do is work their way up through the certifications, because it does build on the previous knowledge. because what we're also looking to do as well, and it really kind of takes this whole kind of continual professional development that says, you know, if you're kind of developing your career, then you need to kind of build up that knowledge and keep up to date. And so it's, again, going back to, this is not just a certification body, it's actually an association. It's in terms of how do we maintain that that professional kind of insight into our industry.
Yeah, I think one of the questions as well, which I'm not necessarily got, but I think before we move on from the AIPMO stuff, is people saying, well, if I did the course, the expert level course, you know, in June, if they, because of the nature of AIPMOs and new research and stuff coming through, do I miss out on the new stuff that comes out? How does that
this
work?
year or next year?
Yeah.
Yes. So again, this is one of the things that as you become, when you become certified, you will have access then to the new research that is coming through, in order to kind of maintain that. And certainly, as I say, we actually did the course ourselves last year, and one of the amazing things that's happened since then is that the alumni of that course have continued to keep in touch with each other, and actually we use each other to bounce ideas off and continue to learn from each other. And as kind of the research comes through, we have some really kind of insightful conversations that continue to develop. We also have quite a bit of fun with that group as well, it has to be said. It's not all kind of serious work, but it really is about kind of that kind of development of the profession and not just development of the kind of the skills and knowledge. So those are the kind of the three key certifications, and this is where we have some of the kind of additional things that we're starting to have a look at, is on which courses do we actually start looking at the behavioural side of the PMO. And you're probably, or hopefully you're aware that through the PMO flash mob, Lindsay and I are involved in developing the competency framework, and we recognise that actually that anything we do, any service we provide in the PMO, actually is kind of pretty pointless if we don't demonstrate the right behaviours. And although the certification courses cover some of those off, we will be developing additional non-certification courses where we'll be picking up some of the more behavioural aspects of the PMO, but again specifically designed for individuals who are working in a PMO. So you'll find that we'll be covering off things like facilitation skills, coaching skills, but we'll do them, and all of the exercise will be from a PMO perspective.
And I think stuff like relationship building and stakeholder stuff, because one of the things that the questions you often get is this difficulty between, you know, you might be working as a PMO manager. How do you get from a PMO manager to that next high level, you know, like board level type role? And that's where the behavioural stuff really comes into it all, isn't it? So it's a case of you know, this is the stuff that you want to do, and we'll get there eventually.
So, you know, we've talked a bit about the certification. We've had lots of questions about that. But actually, people then get down to kind of, well, actually, is there any point in doing it at all? Do I really need it? And I know Lindsay's already touched upon it, but perhaps you just want to talk about from your recruitment experience, Lindsay, what you've seen in terms of, does it really make a difference?
It absolutely does. I mean, like I said just briefly before, that, you know, it's a demonstration and a commitment to your profession. I mean, you hear that all the time from your project management associations and stuff, but this is for project managers demonstrating their commitment. And I think, again, this is about this PMO people doing exactly the same. It's practice what you preach and lead by example and all that kind of stuff. So, but the other
a PMO principle in that.
It is a PMO principle. Anyway, so does it have obviously it has a positive impact on your career. I've never met anybody yet that's done some of the courses that we talked about. I said that it's a negative in terms of you know, things like, for example, with the AIPMO course, is that even just in that short amount of time since they did that one last year, that, you know, people are starting to see it's different opportunities. It gives you a different mindset. And a lot of it as well is around the more knowledge you have, the more confidence, and it's a self-perpetuating thing, you know. And I often say to, because I do careers advice stuff with people, and I just say, you know, that often you will find that even just by doing a training course, or you know, even just maybe like an e-learning thing or whatever, just how different you're thinking then next time. So for example, when I've said to people about, tell me about your experiences around P3O, and it's like, I don't really know that much about it. Go away, come back and talk to me again when you've done that. And it's amazing how different their discourse is, the way that they choose to articulate themselves, how they've used to, they couldn't demonstrate what kind of level of service they offered or what services they do because they didn't know, what is the terminology even, so it's just little things like that. And of course, But
I think the other thing is as well is around the certification training. It covers, and you will meet people on the courses who come from different industries and different backgrounds and different PMOs. And we all know that there's kind of never two PMOs that are exactly the same. And so if you've got kind of experience just in one organisation, actually getting a broader view, and I know it was always kind of fascinating, it was certainly when we started kind of doing PMO and looking outside the organisation, it was amazing trying to find somebody who just did what we did. So finding another PMO person was kind of that was amazing. But actually what you learn is actually that other PMOs, mine is not the only way to do things. So actually that kind of broader view about other services that can be provided, other kind of levels that, in terms of kind of where it sits. So if you've been working on a project, understanding what the differences are at program level.
Yeah, I think when you find in the recruitment, when you're going for interviews and people are asking you questions, the fact that you're able to demonstrate, I've got, this is my practical, real hands-on life experiences. However, I also recognise that, best practice approaches from X are around this, or you know what I mean. It's that kind of depth, really, I suppose, rather than it just being a one-trick pony.
Yeah. So this is the kind of probably one we get kind of quite a bit, and particularly because of the overlap between the kind of the three different courses. So about which one is best. If I want to be a PMO manager, which one should I go on?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's like you said, it's about context, isn't it? As well. I mean, just thinking about if you're working potentially in a very very IT focused organisation, would doing the PPSO stuff, because it's from the Chartered Institute for IT, actually might swing it for you in terms of your business might be prepared to fund that because it is recognised thing from that industry. If it's what I've found a lot in my recruitment career, the people that are working more in public sector, for example, follow and actually it's really weird. Instead of calling it a PMO, they call it a P3O. I find that really strange. But you see that a lot more. So you see, for example, so if you're in public sector, would P3O be more beneficial than say the IT one? But again, this is why often. What I've found in my career is that you need to speak to people, and that's what we're here to do. And
I think the P3O course, kind of going back to kind of, there's a lot of focus on making sure you're doing the right thing. So if you're going into a kind of a PMO, and I did when I got my first kind of PMO role, PMO manager role, I was going into an organisation where the PMO, that kind of, although they were recruiting and getting a replacement for the PMO manager, I was basically told, well, it's kind of there. We're not quite sure what it does and kind of whether it adds any value, but we want somebody in there because it seems to do some stuff that we think is useful, which is always an interesting position to go into. And for that kind of role, where you want to understand the kind of the tools and techniques and some processes to really do that kind of quite kind of clinical analysis to kind of think about, well, actually, which ducks do I need to put in a row to make this actually work and be seen to add value and be seen to add value? The P3O is great. Again, we've talked about from an AIPMO perspective, from a PMO manager's perspective, that kind of practitioner course where you've perhaps kind of got a well set up PMO and it's understood what it does. Having a look at that kind of broader view about excelling in the management of that PMO, the AIPMO course may be more suitable. So again, it's not about, as we keep saying, it's not about what's the best course, it's about what's the best course for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a context is really, and we know that every organisation has even for like the term PMO manager, it means so many different things. I mean, what level? I've seen PMO managers at like a level, level 2, because the kind of organisation.
It's a very small kind of project.
And it's
PMO.
very low risk type of projects that they're dealing with. But again, we've also got these titles like PMO lead. I mean, where's that? So you can see that it's a conversation, and and it'll be an unbiased one, because
Yes.
there's three things there, and it's a discussion to be
had.
had.
And we want to make sure that actually you're on the right course.
Yeah.
Because we would hate you to kind of turn up and not enjoy and not get what you need from those courses.
Really bad feedback.
Yes, no, we don't. We're not into that. Yeah. So the other thing I suppose that you probably see a lot of is this kind of I'm a freelancer, and what surprised me actually over certainly the last kind of 5 to 6 years is the boom in PMO consultants and roles that are out there. I say consultants and freelancers.
Yeah. It is a fascinating one, and I think this is a recognition it's that PMO has changed and has become more prominent, and also that a lot of organisations got a bit fed up of some of the big consultancies coming in, putting a PMO in place, and all of that. You know what I'm talking about. So actually, a lot more of them are thinking, well, we can get a good contractor in to be able to do this PMO position, set it up, and what have you. And that's okay. Contractor, like a PMO contractor, somebody who's contracting in that space tends to be, somebody like an analyst, and you get PMO managers, but it's almost like the PMO has already been established, so you're coming in to run it. There's a lot more organisations wanting people to come in and implement.
So they take the results of, say, for P3 and 3 assessment and say, what do we do now then? What can we do to kind of drive project management capability by that's supported by a PMO?
Yeah, and so a lot of more of the conversations with those kind of people is I want to be a PMO consultant as opposed to somebody that comes in and just manages something that's already been established. And actually, if you're going to do that, you need to have, there's a lot of other things. Obviously, there's the gravitas and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, where's your credentials? Otherwise, how do I know that you're going to be coming to do an interview or whatever? But there are different approaches for this. So, how do you consult with an organisation about setting up a PMO for the first time? And actually, that's where some of the more expert level stuff for the AIP bit gets really into,
and that really is in terms of the level of the PMO, in terms of, so certain when you go in and kind of do your P3MO, your P3 and 3 assessment, then what they're looking for is somebody that perhaps has got kind of a P3O, so they know they're going to go through a kind of a structured process to decide on what the PMO is and kind of set that up. If you're going in and an organisation is kind of, and I currently working with a couple of organisations where they're saying, actually, we're thinking about introducing project management into the organisation, and actually, we're just starting to work with the board to develop strategy, and you're working at that level, and then the outcomes of that are going to be the establishment of some PMOs. Then again, AIPMO may be a better grounding in terms of doing that more consultative role across the whole kind of project management spectrum, not just
I think there's like a full hour in this whole thing around the freelance consultant bit, because it, like I say, it's a great opportunity for a lot of people. And of course, we're just talking about the L&D, the learning and development, the training bit, in relation to obviously what we're talking about here today, but of course there are other things to consider.
Yes.
It's for me, if I'm going to take somebody seriously, I want to see, but the commitment. I want to know that the best practice knowledge is there, as well as the hands-on, getting your hands dirty experience. All it's there.
So I think just finishing off in the last kind of couple of minutes of our hour, we are available to speak to people. So on the website you can register to kind of for us to contact you. You give us a ring. We may not be available immediately, but we definitely will get back to you. And as we've said, kind of finding the course that's best for you is what we're there to help you to do.
Yeah, the best approach is to have a look at the website. If you see some of the courses that you're interested in, you'll see that there's a delegate details. And essentially what you'll do is fill that out. You can upload your CV, and we'll get back to you and have a chat with you. You can just put some notes about which course it is that you're interested in. And there's no obligations. It's just, trying to get to this point of understanding that, which is the right course for you. And you might find that, it could be something that's a 6 month, year down the line. That's fine. Sometimes you've got to start doing the groundwork in order to be able to ask.
Absolutely, yes. So
can I have the?
And you know, it's also kind of, Lindsay and I have both got experience of lots of organisations now that we've worked at over the years. Again, so you know, we speak most company languages now in terms of projects, programs, and PMOs. So again, kind of working through some of that kind of terminology that you might say on our website that doesn't resonate with yours, we can kind of do some of that kind of translation as well to help.
Yeah.
So, like, just we've got our details there. Oh, I missed one. How do I get my organisation to pay for it? So, when you've been through all the process,
did you see? I tried to give her that that little in, then she just went completely over
my head.
Because it's important. Because, like I say, you start doing the groundwork now, you may get it signed off. You know, in the next review period that you've got, or whatever, you know, or if you're paying for it yourself, if you're a contract consultant, you know, those are obviously different propositions there. And we're pulling together collateral on the website all the time. There is something there already to P3O Foundation. It's the benefits, the values of it, how to make that approach, things to consider when you're asking for the budget, because it's not just a training course itself, as hopefully you don't want to be sleeping on the streets. So and also just to let you know that it's early days for PMO Learning. That's where a lot of the courses we've been scheduling so far in London, because we're not crazy, you know, we know there's a lot of people in the London area, but also one of the other things you can do, you'll see on the website under the accreditations bit, is that you can actually just register yourself for, you know, if you'd like a course in a particular area of the UK. One of the things I didn't realise is because training is not my, you know, background, PMO is, and career stuff it certainly is, but what I didn't realise is actually a lot of people in the training industry, what we do these days is get a lot of people to register for where you want to course. And the way that it works is that you then you have a waiting list really for the and then you work together to get you know. So then, you know, if you get like 2-3 people that are wanting a certain course in Birmingham, for example, there's minimum numbers, and then essentially what we do is find other people to join it. So I didn't realise that's what people did. So you can see on the website that you can actually register interest for your particular region. And one of the other things I'd really love to do is a residential. You know, certainly the AIPMO course. They've disappeared, haven't they? I mean, why have they disappeared? I mean, it's such a great. So we did ours residential, and it was amazing. Yeah. Again, for the evening conversations. Yeah, exactly. So and that reflective time to kind of mull things over in a more relaxed atmosphere really added a whole load of value. Yeah, and I just feel sometimes that the whole training industry is just dumbing down a bit too much. Cost, you know, we all know that, you know, business is competitive and what have you, but I still think that, especially with the AIPMO, the expert level and the practitioner level, it's very much a good idea to do residential. So if you want a residential, say, you know, Florida, or wouldn't that be lovely? It'll be in the UK, Lindsay. It'll be in the UK. Yeah. So essentially, we've come to the end of our hour. We've gone over, which is really bad project management. But if you want to get hold of us, the website's there. Like I said, there's a couple of ways you can get in touch with us, just general inquiry through the contacts. Or if you're really thinking about a certain course, you go to that course page and you can get in touch with us with the delegate details. There's our email addresses. You can get in touch with us directly there. Or you can pop into a flash mob and say, is it a flash mob? We'd love to see you there. Yeah, so have a look at PMO Flash Mob, because that's the sister company, and you know, more informal, fun learning with a glass of wine or something in your hand. Indeed. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Excellent. Bye. Thanks.